Welcome back, Focus Learners. I'm absolutely thrilled to guide you through today's explainer. We're diving into a massive viral sensation that's basically taken the whole nutrition world by storm. I'm talking about the glucose goddess trend, sparked by biochemist Jessie Inchauspé and her book, The Glucose Revolution. Our goal today is pretty straightforward. We're going to dig right into the actual science of blood sugar, check out these super popular hacks designed to manage your energy, sleep, and weight, and, separate the genuinely helpful daily habits from all the marketing hype. But first, let me ask you something I think literally all of us can relate to. Why do we crash at 3 p.m.? You know that exact feeling, right? You've had lunch, maybe a couple of hours pass, and suddenly you're just staring blankly at your screen, desperately hunting for a cup of coffee or some sugary snack just to keep your eyes open. Well, today we are investigating how fluctuations in our blood sugar might actually be the secret culprit behind that afternoon fatigue, those intense cravings, and honestly, even our mood swings. Okay, let's dive into this roadmap. We're going to start with the glucose phenomenon and the anatomy of a spike. Then, we'll get super practical with science-backed hacks and the savory breakfast switch. Finally, we'll look at hype versus reality and wrap the whole thing up with habits over obsession. Section 1. The glucose phenomenon. Unpacking the viral sensation. Moving right along to Section 2. Anatomy of a spike. What exactly happens inside us? So before we get into all the actionable solutions, what actually happens inside us when we eat? Getting this foundation down is going to make all the hacks we discuss later make perfect sense. Let's start with a clear definition. A glucose spike is a sudden surge in blood sugar concentration in your bloodstream right after eating, which then triggers your pancreas to release a hormone called insulin. Now look, glucose itself is absolutely not bad. It's our body's main energy source. But if we eat way too much of it all at once, especially in the form of refined starches and sugars, our body basically has to panic and release insulin to clear that excess out of the blood, stashing it away as fat or glycogen. And that massive rapid spike, well, it's followed by a sharp drop. And that drop is exactly what causes that infamous energy crash and sudden aggressive hunger. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how this process works. Think of it like a giant IKEA furniture analogy. When sweet or starchy foods enter your body, they're kind of like complex, fully assembled pieces of furniture. Your digestive system then acts like an assembler in reverse. As the food travels from your mouth down to your stomach and then to your small intestine, these carbohydrates are totally disassembled into tiny individual glucose molecules. These tiny molecules then slip right through your intestinal membrane, and when a massive wave of them rushes into your bloodstream all at the exact same time, boom, you get a glucose spike. Section 3. Science-backed glucose hacks. Simple habits for steady energy. Now we shift over to the really practical stuff. And the absolute beauty of these hacks is that they're all based on addition, not restriction. You don't necessarily have to ditch your favorite foods. You just have to add specific habits to completely change how your body processes them. First up is this super viral food sequencing hack. The whole idea is just to eat your food in a very specific order. Step 1. Vegetables first. The soluble fiber in veggies absorbs water and basically creates this thick, viscous gel barrier right in your digestive tract. Step 2, proteins and fats second. These guys slow down your overall digestion. Step 3, carbohydrates last. Because you've already laid down that protective barrier of fiber, protein, and fat, the carbs are broken down way, way more slowly. And studies referenced by the glucose goddess actually suggest this simple sequencing trick can reduce post-meal glucose spikes by up to 70%. Crazy, right? This actually leads us directly to the concept of naked versus clothed carbs. Essentially, you just don't want to let your carbs go out naked. A naked carb is when you eat starches or sugars completely alone. Think of a plain piece of toast or just a big bowl of pasta. The result there is super rapid digestion and a really sharp spike. But if you clothe those carbs by pairing them with protein, fat, or fiber, like say putting a couple of eggs on that toast or some grilled chicken on that pasta, you physically slow the release of glucose into the intestine. This gives your body the time it needs to use insulin efficiently, giving you a nice, gentle curve instead of a really harsh spike. Here's another incredibly popular hack you've probably seen floating around: the pre-meal vinegar drink. So having just 1 tablespoon of vinegar, like apple cider vinegar, diluted in a tall glass of water about 20 minutes before a really carbohydrate-heavy meal can reduce glucose spikes by up to 30%. The science here is pretty cool. The acetic acid in the vinegar temporarily inhibits the carb-digesting enzymes in your stomach, and it also improves how your muscles take up glucose. This gives your body more time to use insulin efficiently, which reduces both the spike and those intense sugar cravings that usually follow right after. Just remember, please, you literally must dilute it to protect your tooth enamel and your stomach lining. Now, what's really interesting to see here is the actual clinical timeline. It completely demonstrates how just taking a post-meal walk visibly reduces that glucose peak. When you eat a meal and your blood sugar starts to rise, taking just a quick 10 to 15-minute brisk walk tells your muscles, hey, we need energy. And crucially, your muscles can actually absorb glucose straight from your bloodstream to use as fuel without even needing insulin. This literally clears the glucose right out of your blood, significantly flattening that curve. Section 4. The savory breakfast switch, starting the day with stability. Because our stomachs are completely empty after fasting all night long, our bodies are incredibly sensitive to glucose first thing in the morning. That makes breakfast literally the absolute worst time of day to eat naked carbs. Let's just contrast the two options directly. A sweet breakfast, like a bowl of cereal, some instant oats, or maybe a fruit-only smoothie, might give you this super quick hit of dopamine. But inside your body, it acts essentially like pure starch. It causes a massive spike, a really harsh energy crash, and early hunger within just a couple of hours. On the flip side, a savory breakfast is built on protein, fat, and fiber. It flattens out your glucose curve and yields really steady, sustained energy for up to 4 hours. So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, here are some immediate, super actionable savory breakfast ideas you can try tomorrow. You could do scrambled eggs cooked in butter with a nice handful of spinach. Or grab some 5% fat Greek yogurt and throw in some chia seeds and almonds. Avocado toast on sourdough or seed bread is absolutely fantastic, or honestly, even just leftovers from last night's dinner work perfectly. And if you really, really want something sweet, just save a piece of whole fruit for the very end of the meal. That way, all the fiber and protein you just ate can buffer the sugar. Section 5. Hype versus reality. What the medical professionals actually say. Now, it's our job in this explainer to look at the full picture, and that definitely includes the critical voices of medical professionals regarding some of the more extreme claims of this movement. To understand their perspective, we need to look at this specific number, 11 millimoles per liter. Medical experts are quick to point out that a post-meal glucose rise is actually a perfectly normal, totally healthy physiological response. It is only when post-meal spikes exceed 11 millimoles per liter or stay elevated for prolonged periods that it actually becomes a diagnostic indicator of prediabetes or a genuine medical worry. As Dr. Michael Tsoukas, an endocrinologist, notes, whether the spikes cause organ damage has been debated for years. You see, dietitians and doctors have raised some real concerns that influencers might be over-medicalizing a completely normal bodily function, basically to profit from the worried well. This is especially noted when it comes to the marketing of untested, anti-spike dietary supplements that claim to magically block sugar absorption but severely lack rigorous, independent clinical testing. Furthermore, critics point out the real limits of the evidence being presented online. While the dietary hacks themselves are generally considered super healthy, some of the wilder claims, like curing wrinkles or resolving severe mental health symptoms, are just exaggerated or extrapolated from really tiny studies, sometimes involving fewer than 50 people. Dietitians also strongly warn against this kind of extreme fear-mongering around perfectly healthy whole foods, like oats. And finally, the massive push for non-diabetics to wear continuous glucose monitors, or CGMs, is pretty contested, mostly because these devices can sometimes overestimate blood sugar levels in people who don't even have diabetes. Section 6. Habits over obsession. Finding the right balance. So how do we practically apply all these great tips without inadvertently developing rigid or disordered eating patterns? The crucial point is this. Health professionals explicitly warn against using real-time tracking devices if you don't have a medical need for them, because hyper-focusing on a single real-time metric can actually trigger severe anxiety. At the end of the day, true health is about your overall habits. It's about prioritizing whole foods, getting quality sleep, and managing your stress, not just obsessively trying to force a perfectly flat blood sugar line. Let's summarize our blueprint for today. We've seen that eating your veggies first is highly effective, though yeah, it can be a little tricky with mixed meals like casseroles. The vinegar shot definitely works, but you absolutely must dilute it. Switching up to a savory breakfast is incredibly powerful for sustained energy, even if it requires shifting a few cultural habits. And a simple 10-minute post-meal walk, just a highly effective way to use up glucose naturally. So sure, the marketing might sometimes be a bit hyped, but these core daily habits are genuinely brilliant, totally safe, and entirely backed by science. Which leaves us with this final, really important thought for you to ponder. Are you optimizing your health, or are you just obsessing over it? The whole goal of understanding your glucose is to empower you to have way more energy and fewer cravings, not to make you terrified of a simple bowl of oatmeal. So add these smart, structured habits to your meals, enjoy that smooth, sustained energy, and leave all the anxiety behind. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.